The traditional Greek dwellings were made with a stone foundation and sun-baked bricks, and they did not have baths. In ancient Greece, the typical diet consisted mostly of bread and fish, occasionally accompanied by eggs, olives, grapes, and figs.
The vegetables consumed by the Greeks were lentils, celery, radishes, and beans. Meat was rare and typically only eaten after the religious sacrifice of a goat. All dairy was produced from goats.
Both political and social life for the Greeks was centered around men. Women's lives were more restricted.
Women often stayed close to their home and family. On this topic, Pericles said, quote,
"The greatest honor a woman can have is to be least spoken of in men's company, whether in praise or criticism,"
displaying the expectation of women to be outspoken.
Women were not thought of as important people in society. Girls did not attend school like the boys. Their only occupation was to look after their home and do household chores.
In these ancient Greek times, they had corn instead of bread, so they had to make the bread. They had to grind the corn and bake the bread instead of just buying it from the store. They didn't just buy items of clothing either. They had to spin the wool, they had to dye the wool, they had to weave the wool until they were able to make it into clothing.
Adding to the to-do list, they had to go shopping and do cooking. The wealthy had slaves to do their work. Children who were born weak and sickly were usually left in a clay pot to die.
Now you see, when a healthy baby was born, it was celebrated, it was praised. People loved healthy babies. They would shower them with gifts like pets and clay animals and rattles and things like that. And they grew up to have a healthy childhood and a happy childhood, playing games like leapfrog and hockey. The love among family members was shown by the elaborate gravestones and paintings showing funerals.
When a person died, their corpse was laid in the house and mourned by family and friends. Family and friends cut their hair and wore black. Musicians were hired. The dead were sometimes cremated and sometimes buried. At age 15 and up, a woman's only purpose was to marry.
Now these marriages were arranged, and sometimes the bride wouldn't even see the groom until the day of the wedding, and the groom was significantly older than the bride.
Wedding meals were held at the bride's home. At these meals, both families and extended members of the families joined together.
Now usually there was a wedding cake, and the bride and groom would be showered with sweets and all kinds of other things. And songs would be sung as the bride was taken to the groom's house.
Most cities were centered around the agora, where people met to discuss politics and hold assembly.
Now the agora would be surrounded by delicate and beautifully built buildings for both civic and governmental purposes. And the houses would be small and cramped because most people spent their time outside, especially in the city. Now, another important area of social society in the ancient Greek times was the baths. These were communal areas where you would strip, soak, and be covered in perfumes and oils.
In some cities, there were parks called gymnasia, where young men would exercise, running, wrestling, etc. They would exercise naked.
It's always been essential to Greek life, to making the outdoor space and the outdoor time the most important.